Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Extra Hours as part of the Office Hours Global network of excitement. You can check out how to join and find all the links and things. You can go to officehours.global/join, and you can get the links to be able to jump into our Makana platform, which is where you can chat and ask questions and all of that. I am speaking to you from a place called Mount Barker in South Australia, which is up a big hill from Adelaide, South Australia. On the other side of that hill, at the bottom of the hill, is our friend, Carl Asmussen. Hello, Carl. Welcome. Good afternoon. It's just gone. It's 12:30. That's right. Yeah. Nice to have you here. I'm interested in your observations about red being purchased by Nikon. That'll be a little thing to talk about. We'll see if someone asked a question. We've got a few questions stacking up, which is good too. I think this is right. David Brady from New York. You're in New York, yes. And
That is.
is this your maiden voyage on Extra Hours?
No. I think I was here once.
Oh,
early
you
on.
were
I think
right at the
maybe
start.
episode
That's right.
2 or something.
That's right. You were
It's
too.
been a while,
Yes.
but I still couldn't find the link to the show. But thank you for
Well,
the columns there and all that.
I mean that could happen weekly for most of us, right? Yeah. Where is that link again?
It's been a while since I've had the time and ability to jump on any of the shows. I was curious though if one day during the working days, if nobody's around at the office, if I could join in office hours from my office, or would that be kind of ironic?
Yeah,
that'd be great.
Office hours from office. What's a current exciting project that you're working on, either professionally or personally?
The professional side, since we're back at the office and the company I work for is going through some M&A kind of stuff, but we're slowly collapsing floors and we're shutting down a lot of our Cisco video conference infrastructure finally. So yeah, that's kind of fun.
So that's exciting to be shutting down the
Cisco stuff. Yeah. And we're building out more and more Zoom rooms across the campus, across the world. Yeah, pretty good stuff.
Very cool. The man to blame for all of us being here is Lindsay. Hello, Alex.
I don't know if I'm still to blame for it. I mean, I started it, but I think we're all to blame for it. I mean, you're member number one, so I think you share some blame. That's all I'm saying.
I share some of the blame. I'm happy to take that. Arguably, you're working on the most. I was going to say the most complex, but you've worked on pretty complex shows before. Would it be fair to say it's complex?
It's complex. It's complex.
It's the scale of it, I guess, is the thing.
Yeah, right? It's so many parts. So it's just like lots of parts and lots of people, and everybody has different accountabilities, and so there's just a lot of and you're dealing with some stuff that's very new and some stuff very old, and you're trying to kind of piece it all together. So it's a very heterogeneous mix of things that are all happening at the same time. So that's it's keeping me learning. I'm learning fast. It was funny. I was talking to I wasn't talking. I have a tendency. I follow a lot of educators on X, and I got into the habit I'm going to follow a bunch of educators, but I found myself I can't help but argue with them because it's what I do. I argue with people. But I don't argue I don't feel like I argue in an inappropriate way. I challenge people. People challenge me. I'm very comfortable with it. I have to always understand that I grew up in a family that was kind of a crucible. People were arguing all the time about things, but not in an angry way, but if you had an idea that you said that you were expected to be able to defend it, and so when they say things, I can't help but, make them defend it, and one of the things that came up was someone talking about how we have to, that project-based learning doesn't work. And I think there was some point where because this is the reason I was thinking about it, was this project I'm on right now. Project doesn't work. And I was like, well, that after school, everything is project-based learning. like it might be. I know that you're in a mode that they should just read and take tests, but yeah, the rest of life is a different way. So I think that it's so right now I get to learn really fast. I mean, most of my life has been most of my last 25 years has been learning usually through some kind of fire hydrant water that's just kind of that I'm just trying to keep up with all the time. And
Yeah, I mean, 5 years ago when you started this, I'm sure you weren't thinking, I think I'd be doing this daily for the next 5 years, and sometimes twice daily. Now
yeah, exactly.
twice daily.
Now twice. Yeah, no, it's but a lot of times I'm always still going back after the same when I talked about some of the stuff I'm working on. But there was a point in about 2014 where Pixel Core was right against the rocks. We finally hit the rocks, but there was a time when we were scraping against the rocks. And my wife asked, she goes, "What's plan B? Like, what's plan B?" And my answer was, plan B is to make plan A work. like that's I don't have a plan B. And so then when we finally, when recently we've been talking about some of the stuff I'm working on and some of the stuff I want to do with office hours, and my wife pointed out, she goes, "You're still working on plan A, aren't you?" I was like, "Well, maybe." So we're getting close to being able to do some.
A nice feeling to have. I think first is actually defining what is plan A, and actually a lot of people struggle with that. Is knowing I don't know what I want to do, and lots of people are caught in that. And I actually had a really deep conversation with an Uber driver just this week. We had a 45-minute drive. And sometimes on those opportunities, same with sitting next to someone in the plane, most of the time I don't speak to them, but sometimes it happens where you just get talking. And I've had some deep conversations where I'm like, I'm never going to see this person again. And so I'm just going to ask some tough questions. And I was, kind of doing some life coaching with this guy. And I left that time thinking, do you know what? I am doing my, plan A. This is really, what I love doing, the combination of all of this,
it's, I don't hold like what I do as a thing that I'm doing as much as a place that I'm standing. So what I mean by that is I'm standing in a place of this is what I'm up to. And when you stand there, things come by and what it tells you is I'm standing here. So I ignore some things because I'm like, that's not in my space, but I grab onto things when they come by. You just grab onto them like, oh, that's my, it's that thing where when you know what you're trying to do, you often, or what you're finding the things that you need. It's like that when you buy a car, suddenly everybody's got the same car you do. They always had the same car you did. You just didn't notice them until you had that car, right? And suddenly you notice all the other cars that are like yours. Well, when you know where you're standing and what you're looking for, then the things in life that are necessary for that to move forward present themselves. So a lot of times I wouldn't say that I'm doing things as much as I'm just waiting for things to arise. Like when you're up for something, things the things that assist what you're looking for show up. So anyway. So it's fun. Good. There's a lot of, there's so much going on right now in media that it's just exciting. I feel like one of the frustrations I have is that we did, we had this week in media that we created years ago, and then we killed it because media wasn't moving fast enough. Like it was just kind of like, there's not enough to talk about each week. We just needed a 5-year gap and turn it back on again.
And then you can do it daily.
No, thank you. No one should do a show daily. Definitely not twice a day.
It's crazy. I was thinking that with how, kind of busy and stretched your brain must be at the moment. Thinking that, some of the questions that we get just has to take you off into places where, like you're talking about RGBW processing in cameras this morning. And, but I think it's in the realm though. Would you say that all of these things, all of these questions, you're kind of marinating in this space? Yeah.
Totally. And I think that doing these shows every day makes you actively think about them all the time. And it drives me at least to keep learning because people are asking questions that I have to think about. And then what happens, of course, is that now I'm awake to that too, and then things we played with, like I was talking, I said I was going to go get something. I think you probably thought I was going to get tea or something like that. I was going to show you my wand.
Oh, show
I
and
have
tell.
where my this is my ambisonic staff. So it's this so it's like I feel like I should be like Gandalf going, you shall not pass. Anyway, but what this is it's a monopod. This is a Manfrotto monopod, but I put this this is a Zoom H3 on top of it. So this is an ambisonic let's pull the top off here. Sorry, it's really on there. There we go. So this is a ambisonic mic, right? And and so what's cool about it is it's self-contained. So it's not it doesn't need to be wired into anything. It just records internally. A little noisy, like the self noise is a little higher. You'd have to process it a little bit to get some of the hiss out of it. But it's $300 or $250. It's not very expensive for this kind of mic. I've got a bunch of ambisonic mics at this point. So so anyway, but because it's self-contained, what I did is I took it. This is what I do on my days off, or as close to get a day off as possible, is where I'm working less than normal. Sunday I went to the farmer's market. Of course, I took my ambisonic mic with me, and recorded a little bit of a guy playing. Some guy's playing guitar, and so one of the things that I've been playing with is this idea that there's something about when I look at through the Apple Vision Pro, I look at the I feel like you want to hear more around you. Like and the more I feel like there was a great Prima, I can't think of the last name of the app, but I keep on thinking Prima. But it's a new app on the Apple Vision Pro that has a band playing in Immersive, and it looks great. It's some of the best looking footage I've seen on the Apple Vision Pro. But I wanted more air. Like I wanted the reverb in the room that they were in to be there. And I've really gotten conscious to that as we get closer and closer to the Blackmagic camera being released. I don't know when I'll get a Blackmagic camera, but I feel like I really want to get good at capturing the environment that the spatial is in. And so anyway, I took what's cool about that staff is it's pretty stiff, and I can just set it down and kind of step off to one side and shoot, but I'm capturing kind of the stuff around it. So I didn't even have to wire it to, I'm building this kit to wire it to my phone, but I didn't have to.
And you can, as in you could get it live out of the 4 channels out of it live?
You don't need, well, I'm not doing 4 channels. So what I'm doing is I take
mixes down.
So what comes out of line out and out of the headphone jack is a binaural mix down. So it folds down to that. And so I have this little guy. This is little 1/8" jack to XLR. And then that goes into this. So then I can either go straight into the phone using the 1/8" jack to like a little converter. I've got a Movo makes one that is just like a little wire that will just go straight in. As well. It doesn't need power. The mic is self-powered, it's battery powered.
As in not,
or I can go
but powering the phone is what I mean. So
the phone has battery. So I mean, I could, if I gave it a hub, I could definitely do that. But what I'm doing here is, of course, this is the Mix Pre, so I can do 2 into the Mix Pre, and then what I'm trying to do is build it so that I have another electrosonic going into the 3rd channel, so that I can interview people, but still deliver to you, interview people with the mic going down in a phantom center, but deliver you a binaural experience of everything that's around you. And I'm like, very close. The only thing that's missing right now is that I have a license only for 1 channel on this, because at the time I only needed 1, and so I have to for the Mix Pre, I really need noise reduction on both of them to make it really good. Just to get rid of the hiss. Anyway, but that's kind of that's my little.
That's really cool.
My weekend project.
I think it was NAB a couple of years ago.
2 years ago. We did Ambisonic with the mic.
We did that Ambisonic test, and I was sitting in this room, and I've got 5.1 distinct discrete speakers. And so what I was really surprised about is you know, people have mentioned this before about just hearing the floor a little bit. There's just the noise, because there's so much noise cancellation, or not just noise cancellation, but just the processing of voice, that sometimes on show floors like that, it can be really clean. You got really clean audio, but you don't get a sense of space. It's cutting all that out. But the difference was adding that back in, but then having it come from behind you was next level. And I didn't think that it would feel as special as it did, because it really felt like something about it being, you know, enveloping you behind, and a constant sound that was behind, not just a helicopter flying over, but an environment sound that you're sitting in, I think is different.
And the thing that's interesting is that with 5.1, so what we did there was that we've taken the Ambisonic, we're putting it into the live view, delivering it as 4 channels of Ambisonic with 2 mics. Those showed up at back in master control. The Ambisonic was then converted to 5.1 in Pro Tools. So it's popped back open in 5.1. And then the mics were dropped into the center channel. And the cool thing about that's different than anything else we've done is that we now can attenuate that surround. So it's not just messy. Like you could have a lab and you hear everything just like you're talking about, but it's all messy and it's all mixed in with the person talking. What this does is allow us to have a nice clean center channel with all the, you know, with the person talking nice and clear, but we can add a little bit of, and we can decide how much Mickey was able to, in the crazy world that we live in, we were broadcasting out of San Rafael, California, with an event that was happening in Las Vegas, being mixed by someone in the Philippines. And Mickey's listening to it, making a decision about what that's gonna, of how much to put back in. And when I heard it, when I watched it later, because it's still there. If you go up to look at the NAB coverage, if you have a set top box, you can hear it in if you have a set top box in a 5.1 system, you can hear it in YouTube and on your phone. Like if you have an Apple phone, you can listen to it. It poisoned my mind. That's what I call it. Like when you it's like the red pill. Like once you hear it, I keep on finding myself grasping for, I want to hear more around me. You know, I want to hear that experience now. So I keep on working on it. So this is the cool thing about this is it's much simpler because it's binaural. It's not going to be as good, but what I'm trying to solve is I got one mic and I have a binaural mix, and I'm able to attenuate between the two and give you something where you feel things around you if you're listening, and it'll work on any headset. You know, like, so anybody who puts a headset on will hear stuff around them, and they'll hear the thing that's right in front of them. And it's a relatively simple pipeline, which is what I'm working on. So anyway, we'll see.
It's really cool. It's exciting to see. I remember seeing there's a few places, actually a couple of large churches that I went to that when they were planning it all out, and the audio guys were planning what they wanted, they designed this whole system for the band, and so whole array system in this 6,000-7,000 seat auditorium, and then they were like, but for speaking we kind of want it a little bit different, and so they did a second array, a second hangs for the for speaking. And similarly, when I was at Disneyland and they had one of those outdoor auditoriums, same thing, where all the backing, all the music, everything is all coming from one set of speakers, you know, and then all of the vocals, the live vocals, are all coming from totally separate speakers. And the idea that those speakers are just sending that sound, there's something that you know is amazing to experience. And so it's exactly what you were saying. I was hearing just your voices coming clearly from the center speaker, but I still had all of this space and atmos, and hearing people walk from one and walk around, and you know, that's cool.
It's fun.
Anyway, need to wake David, Brady, and Carl up. Carl, I think we've got a couple of questions there. What's the first one? You're awake, David?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, good. Good question, David.
Well, I currently sit on actually, I'm the board chairman at that Sunday place that I go to, and I think over the past year that has given me some invaluable skills in dealing with people in general. I've never had like a managerial role at work. It's always been dealing with tech and, but those soft skills of meeting people's expectations and elevating people up beyond what they might be looking to do has been really precious to me. It's got me in some cool gigs down the road at work. So it's it's all about finding the path to bring those two different skill sets together.
Yeah, agreed. Carl?
Yeah, so I would echo what David just said there. So people skills is probably the one thing I've learned outside of photography or media that works very beneficially. If you focus, like if you're a gearhead and you focus too much on the gear while you're at work, you don't learn those people skills, and it's pretty hard to actually learn them on the job if your job is to be a gearhead. So having a separate vocation, a separate interest that allows you to develop those soft skills, as David said, those people skills, is probably the most beneficial thing, and it does help in pretty much every aspect of your life, but it especially helps in media production.
Alex?
Yeah, I think I was thinking of two extremes of this. One is that I grew up on a farm, and you had to really understand what was working, or you'd lose something like your arm. And so there was a certain level of paying attention to things and paying attention to where your hands were and paying attention to what you're working on that I still think about when I'm putting things together. Like there's this, like when something isn't working, you've got to be very careful. You'll find that I get very careful very quickly about the pipeline and exactly what it looks like and understanding how all the linkages, because when I growing up, it was like you have all your fingers because you understand what's going on, I realized how much that like childhood, I mean, because in a farm, a 12-year-old is given responsibilities that you should not give them. No, I mean, we wouldn't give them normally, which is that I'm going to put you on a big machine, and if you screw it up, you're not going to make it to lunch. So there, and I say that lightly, but it was, I mean, there was some stuff that we did that was like, I look back on it going, I can't believe we thought that was okay, and so, but it does make me careful in a way that I don't think I would have been without that, growing up in that area. The other thing was I started volunteering on, seminars and stuff like that. And the same thing about the soft skills that David and Carl were talking about. I started as just someone who would do handouts, or help put up the chairs or do those other things. And within a couple of years of doing that, I was a team leader that was accountable for 110 people at 22 years old, and there's 110 people. They have to show up on time. It's very rigorous, very rigorous set of, and they're all volunteers. And it was probably the best training I've ever gotten. That you couldn't take a management course in, managing 110 volunteers at a very high level that are working at a very high level. It just requires a set of soft skills because they can leave anytime they want. Like, you're actually inconvenient. Like, it's not even like it's convenient for them to help you. You're asking them to do a bunch of things like take off their evenings and do all this other stuff. And then you still need them to do it perfectly. And they have to be encouraged to do it in a way that is going to make a difference for them. Like they have to understand why they're doing that, and I found that to be incredibly powerful. And it's definitely affected pretty much everything I've done since that. It was probably the best thing. Is from probably most of my success was, has come from that experience.
It's really cool. Yeah, I had a moment in my career where I got a call out of the blue that said, hey, we want you to move to Queensland and be a youth worker. And I was just like, okay. And so I moved away from, all the production stuff for a couple of years. I didn't teach, I didn't let on that I knew any of this production stuff to the people that I was with, and I just did sort of youth work. And the thing that happened is it made me focus. I really like what John Wallace is saying about, people skills boils down to empathy, putting yourself in others' shoes, understanding someone else's perspective. And that is something that helped me a lot. The thing that I found was that when I eventually came back to, and it's when I started doing live streaming, was once I came back, it was much more about people than it was about tech. And so I find myself now still going back to what is it that we're trying to achieve ultimately with human to human, you know, like what is it? What's the experience we want? What's the emotion that we want? Let's start there, and then we'll find the right tools to use it. Now, that doesn't mean that a bunch of us still don't get geeky about particular bits of gear or whatever. But I think generally, I have found that with office hours, that we're constantly thinking about, you know, what are people, and this is the quote I always use, Alex, when you talk about what is it that people feel versus what they think. And then what we want them to think is that these guys must be using the latest and greatest technology. That's what we want them to think. But actually, what we want them to feel is what we're trying to communicate and what it is there. There was one particular camp that I was an instructor on, and I was doing production for that. So I was teaching sound and some basic video and some basic lighting. And sitting in one of the leaders' meetings, we're talking about how the main sessions were going to be led by the different groups. Some drama, there was this music, this dance group. They never thought that the production team could lead one of the sessions. And I said, can the production team lead one of the sessions? And they were kind of like, oh, really? I was like, well, yeah, because we want to actually apply the things that we're talking about, not just learn a bunch of gear. And so we went out and we made some videos and we did a whole bunch of stuff so that in this main session, we presented it. We presented the work that we had done as a production team. And so they're the sorts of things that has helped me a lot. And particularly when we're doing virtual events now, and I'm constantly talking to people about the human interaction, because people feel like this is somehow counterfeit, a counterfeit
Well,
experience.
You know, one of the things when I was, volunteering and watching people, one of the things I sat and I was a person who sat in the back of the room watching the person leading. And my job is to make sure whatever needs to be handled is being handled. Like it does. Like the bottom line is that everything's happening. That person can be present. They can talk to people. They don't have to do anything other than do that. And I will say that the level of presence that's required to do that, like to really pay attention, definitely impacted my ability to work with talent, because I can sit there and I can see someone uncomfortable with something from 100 miles away. Like I can just see them, like a little move of their mouth or a little like twinge of their eye or their eyebrow just moving just a little bit, and you'll immediately see me start moving. Like okay, well, I can see that they're off, and how do I? First I try to identify what that is, and then I try to eliminate it, like or solve it or whatever it is. So that they can stay there, stay where they need to be. And I think that we miss that a lot in production. It's easy to get caught up in the tech and not pay attention to all this tech is there to make it easier for us to interact with each other. Like that's what the tech should do, is make it easy for us. And that's when our audio is working, when our video is working, when the interactions are smooth, we're able to have a conversation that we can't have otherwise.
Yeah, that's great. We could talk about this for some time. I feel like ultimately what we do in media production, in live production, event production, is a service role. And I'm not sure that everyone gets that, because we've all met people that are doing the role. They're doing that technical role, but they don't have a service mindset. And sometimes it's like it's the opposite. It's like the people on stage serve me, you know, like I run the sound check. It's my sound check and I tell them what to do, versus when I think we get it right, the perspective right, the sound check can be about making them very comfortable on stage, the most comfortable they can be, you know, that most of the sound check should be done before they even get on the stage. You know, that's the idea.
And if they don't mention you, that's usually the best praise too, I
Right.
think,
Yeah.
at some points.
Yep. Totally
know.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next question.
Robert Shoji from Los Angeles, California asks, why is Alex focusing on an ambisonics recording method versus other spatial audio recording techniques?
Alex?
I'm focusing on a lot of them. So you know,
It says I'm not.
Yeah. So the advantage of like I'm working on constructing or getting all the materials to put together a Decca Tree, because I think that that'll be another version of this that I want to grab onto. But I think that the advantage of the ambisonic recording is just that it's very compact. It's something that I can just throw up and grab a bunch of content. You know, like I can grab a bunch of surround things without having, like, a Decca Tree is not something you can, like, you were talking about an NAB. We took we were able to carry that around while we were walking. I can't move a Decca Tree like that. So a Decca Tree is really, you know, and I can't build an array of other things. So right now the ambisonic mic is a compact, something I can take out anywhere, something I can record at different levels. I'm going to borrow a Voyager USB version, the USB version of the Voyager. They have a Dante version and a USB version, and a friend of mine's going to lend me the Dante or the USB version. And you know, that's a second order ambisonic that I'm going to kind of play with. But the main thing is that it, you know, I think that it solves the problem that I'm trying to solve fairly well. I'm also looking at, like, how do we still take music and, you know, mix it into Atmos and move it all around. But I think that bringing some of that air back, I'm just trying to figure out how to bring air back into an Atmos mix, because I was, and it really stood out. I mean, I was already working on it. I've been playing around with Ambisonic for a couple of years, but I really got focused on this new app that came out. That was a great musical presentation, and the only thing that was missing for me was that the air, you know, the feeling like I was in that space, you know. And so then it really intensified how much I wanted to figure this out.
Very good. Carl?
So the one thing that in the question it says recording now, Alex does a lot of live stuff. So when we're talking Ambisonics, Ambisonics itself is essentially 3 or 4 microphones. So those, let's say 4 microphones, which is the most common type you'll see, they can be mixed in many different ways. So Alex just mentioned their second order. There are many different kind of surroundings you can do with that. So the fact that he wants to do it live, there are some, as he said, there's a binaural is coming out of the actual recording device live, which means he can use a binaural presentation in a live scenario. Where if you do a Decca Tree is great for actually recording the volume that you're in. So the actual reverberance of like a music, like a cathedral is a really good example. A Decca Tree is really good in a cathedral. It's good in a concert hall because it actually records the reverberance of the room that the acoustic engineers built into the place. So that's where a Decca Tree comes in. Whereas with an ambisonic microphone, all the capsules are essentially on top of each other for phase, to cancel phase issues. Because if you don't do that, then you'll get phase issues if you're listening in headphones. So this is why ambisonic mics have the capsules essentially on top of each other to make sure that all the sound's coming. And I think Ambisonic's recording or live, how Alex is doing it, is the best solution for something like the Vision Pro. If you're doing a record and then, you know, going post-production, then there's heaps of different ways you can record. But if you're doing live, I think an Ambisonic's, you know, 4-channel microphone is probably the best way still.
And there's other, I mean, we haven't even gotten into, there's so many, when you start doing surround, you know, we haven't even started talking about having a head and putting microphones in what would be the simulation of ears. Yeah. You know, so there's a lot of other ways that I expect to keep playing with it. You know, like I think that there is something about just sound that I think is really magical. And I think that it's easy to pay a lot of attention to video and not really dig into how people feel. You know, I think the sound is to what you were talking about earlier. It is a more direct path to how people feel than video. You know, like I think that it's, you know, and so I think that I find myself when I don't get it right, I get very agitated. Like, you know, You know, like I can get very uncomfortable if the sound isn't working correctly.
Oh, yeah. I think we have all been in situations where the sound is not great in a live venue, and what's worse is when you have the abilities to fix it, but you're not in that position to fix it. That's what's even worse, right? Because
Well, what I
you
find
want
fascinating
to go and fix
is
it.
how you can use sound to make people really uncomfortable. Like, you
Yeah.
know, like, and I mean in sound design, there's this thing that you know, I've you know, seen there was this thing that Ben Burt was showing us in when this was a long time ago when I was in Lucasfilm, and he did this thing where he had something slowly picking up behind you, you know, while you're watching, and you didn't notice it. It was kind of it's kind of like boiling a frog, you know, in the sense that you didn't notice that it was happening, but suddenly you were super uncomfortable. Like, you know, you were like, could barely sit in your seat. And all he had done is just brought up noise from behind you in a way that just, you know, slowly, if you did it slow enough, you didn't notice it, but it made you more and more and more uncomfortable. And it was just an example of how to, you know, how powerful sound can be, is that you don't even notice that you're looking at it, and suddenly you're feeling it.
There was the movie Irreversible that was notorious for that as well. In the theater, they just had this low tone that got people physically ill and leaving the theater, and it just rumbled through the entire film. It was pretty mind blowing.
Yeah.
I think that's called a brown note.
I didn't want to go
Yeah.
there, but yeah.
The 12 hertz or something. Is that what it is? Yeah. One of my dreams of projects is I want to do a documentary about sound, but as as just an audio documentary, but played in cinemas. So the screen's just blank, and then it's just an audio experience, and sort of working with blind blind people as well, to actually as an experience, a kind of a cinematic experience for blind people. That's something I'm working on in the background, thinking about a cappella music as well, you know, voices, because of the human voice and how different it can be, and then what it creates when it adds all the layers to it in a surround environment. So anyway, I'll keep talking about it until it happens.
You know, I was at, you know, we've had John Ross on the show in the past, and I was in his studio, and he played this product that he was working on, and all the music and the sound effects and everything else were happening around you. And then when the singer started to sing 2 or 3 minutes into the song, it just sounded like they were the most present I had ever heard anybody ever be, ever. Like, you know, like it was just, and I asked him what that was, and he goes, well, I created a space for you to listen to this, and then I put somebody in, you know, and I just think that's the magical stuff that I think that we need to play with a lot more, especially as we start to work on VR headsets and so on and so forth.
Love it. Next question.
Alexander Knight from Port Coquitlam in BC, Canada. I roll credits at the end of our YouTube show, which has music. I stop the stream after it's done, but when I check the process version, the stream dies a few seconds before it's finished. I now wait 5 or more seconds before stopping. Thoughts?
Yeah, so my take on this is often that what the whole signal path is all the way through, and where you're previewing it. And so if you're previewing it in the YouTube low latency view, that there would be a discrepancy, I think, between what you see there and if you were to stop it, as to what is going through the whole flow. And so that might be cutting it off soon. So I tend to look at as far end as I can, as in just in the YouTube player, which might be 20 seconds out, you know, 20 seconds of latency. I wait till it's all gone through there. I go to black, I kill it. And that might mean that I've got 10 seconds of tail on the end, but I'd rather that than it cut short. But what's your experience, David?
Well, the shows we produce, we'll usually cut audio first, and somebody is monitoring that live stream. So we'll cut audio, throw up a title card at the end or so, wait till that hits because of that latency, and then fade to black, and the the killing of the encoders should be the last step once you're clear of everything else. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and it used to be that you stop. Didn't you had problems with that, Alex? Right? If you stop the encoder before you actually stop YouTube,
you could lose
you
you
could
could
lose
cut off the end of
yeah.
your show. You know,
Yeah.
it was really interesting. You know, we used to have clients that would really be like, you have to stop right at the very end. And I was like, do we? Like who really is paying attention at the end? You know, and so so we really pushed back on like hard stops at the end. There's hard stops at the beginning, and we'll often trim the beginning to make sure that, you know, you're not watching any more than you need to. But at the end, the best thing to do is really have call to actions or other things like that, because those are the most committed people, are the people the last, you know, and we don't do this as well as we should on our show, but we really should have a call to action as the last slate. So if you look up at it and the last thing you see is, you know, how to join or how to do something or whatever is probably what we should be putting up there. We'll think about it. Now that I've said it, I'm sure next week
we've got to do it now. Yeah, there's been a few shows that we've done where there's been a video roll that happened during the show, and then we just roll that again at the end, right? Like you've put a lot of work into making those video rolls, so put it on loop at the end and let it run for a few times, and then kill the stream. So
the key is always to remember that you always want to be clear, like getting the mic off is the big thing. It's like cut the mics relatively quickly. I will say I do like a ragged end. So I love having the slate up there and hearing like a little bit of, and I never did that before. We did one with Will I Am probably in 2012. If you do a search for like the Will I Am hangout, and we did it from his studio in LA, and he was hanging out with kids, you know, precocious kids from that were doing stuff, and they had thought of a rap for him and done all this other stuff. And at the end we cut it off, but we didn't get the mics down quickly, and it wasn't on purpose. But when we did the post fix, we didn't fix it because there was a warmth there that we didn't want to give up. That was really fun. And so anyway, so then I started doing it. I like ragged, and some people don't like them. I mean, I have a lot of clients that get upset. They feel like it's an open mic by accident, but a lot of times I love hearing I love hearing the slate, and then hearing people go, "Oh, that was a great show," or "I had a really good time," or blah blah blah, or everyone laughs about something. So that's why we do it under the credits for office hours, is because of that.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons. Go, David.
No, I was going to say it could even be like with the Antiques Roadshow, where they always have like the show floor kind of just in the bed, and at the end of a show you just bring that up, and you can't really hear conversations. But sorry, Grant. I forget the protocols here, but it was just.
I'm surprised. I'm surprised that we're using. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm surprised that we're using Antiques Roadshow as a benchmark for what we want to do on our shows. That's impressive. It's a good show.
I know some live streamers too that like to do it at the beginning too, like where you just have kind of an open camera, like a wide open camera and you just kind of hear people getting started. I mean, obviously Leo does that when you're not, if you're in the Twit club, you get to watch us, get ready and figure stuff out. I think it's cool. And we do a little bit of that for office hours.
I was going to mention exactly that. And that is that one of the key reasons to watch live, like Twit, for years for me, was getting on early and staying on late, and it was just that little bit of extra, because you feel more like you're on the inside of the show, or you're more connected, and I always loved that about Twit before, sort of when it was just sort of 24/7 and the gap in between shows. It was just kind of stuff that would happen. And I mean, that can be dangerous too, right? Because you can forget that you've got open mics there sometimes. So
I have to admit, there was a couple of times when I don't think we said anything bad, but it was like a little bit of like, oh, I don't know if I really want that on there, which is why office hours starts at 5 minutes instead of like people ask like, why don't you leave it open? Well, there's a lot of like, I think internally for us there's a lot of housekeeping that goes on before 5 minutes, and I just sometimes we discussed it enough that I was like, I don't know if that really needs to be broadcasted. So we decided to cut it off at 5 minutes, and which is fine. I think you hear a little bit of a little bit of us getting ready, but not too much.
Fair enough. Next question.
Chris Clark from Tempe, Arizona asks, I will be away from home for June to August to escape the Arizona heat. I need a recommendation for a compact mic to use in Zoom meetings while on the road. A not too expensive travel mic.
So I have used a couple of different things. Do you know, if you're looking for more of the podcast sound, then we can get to that. But you know, the Shocks, the Shocks open comms, you know, little boom mic in Zoom, the combination of the noise cancellation that's happening in the mic and the Zoom noise cancellation is very good. I mean, it's very good. Now, we would also say that, you know, the new computers, the new laptops sound amazing as well, right? You get those in the right location, and they can sound really good. I have a little Rode something NT1, no, something. Anyway, there's a little one, a little USB Rode mic that I've used that I don't mind. Although I'd probably more likely to go to a Shure now and just do that, but it's probably not all that compact. So that's worth thinking about. But I would go the Shocks. They look good, and you know, you can walk around. So that's my take. Carl?
It depends on the room you're in. So if the room you're in is relatively dead, then you can get away with a lav mic straight into a Mac. You know, so a Mac actually has a headphone port. That headphone port will take a lav mic. You have to make sure it's a lav mic, a TRRS lav mic that's designed for mobile devices. I have heaps of them because they're amazing and because they work with iPods. So back in the day, iPods could record into. So there was reasons why I used iPods, because you weren't allowed to take recording equipment to certain locations. And I said, no, it's just an iPod. And they're like, fine, but they don't realize that the headphone jack is also a mic jack, and you could use special lav mics to record. Anyhow, lav mic, pick your quality that you want. Another one, as Grant said, you can go the whole podcast route, so you can use a USB kind of mic. So an SM7B, well, actually, I'll be an MV7. I wouldn't use one that requires a preamp or a interface. So something with a USB. The D2 from Behringer, which is their version of the same type of mic. There's other ones from like Apogee. Apogee make a nice USB mic that's more of a condenser type mic. So again, it depends on the room. So the mic from Apogee is actually quite nice, but it's a condenser, so it's going to pick up all the room noise. So yeah, it depends. And these are all small mics. They're all self-powered or bus powered. So it's really depends on what you kind of want. But I would personally, if it's just meetings, literally just meetings, and you're in a room that hasn't got too much echo, then a lav mic, you can't go wrong with lav mic. It's usually quite good for that. Or the mic built in, if you're using like a beamforming microphones that they have on the modern laptops.
Yeah, and Guy put a link to a Sennheiser one, the lav mic, which is really nice. USB-C cable straight through to it, which is nice. And David?
There's no definition to not too expensive, but you know, that's the mic I'm using is a USB mic that's about $300, but it's pretty solid. Comes with a little stand, weighs a ton, looks pretty sharp. The one thing I'll add with the open comms, the Shocks device, if you do go that route, there's a UC version that comes with a little dongle that instead of pairing via Bluetooth, you go via that dongle, whether it's USB A or C, because the clarity and fidelity of the audio is a whole bunch better. And you can also multi-pair, so you can have the UC comms on your phone and the computer and toggle between them. It's pretty dynamite.
Nice. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always surprised. I use the OpenCom version 2. I haven't gotten the brand new version, which is USB-C, which I very much want to. I already have two. I have two of the OpenComs version 2s, and I have two of the OpenCom version 1s. But I burned the batteries out on the OpenComs version 1s because I used them so much, and the 2s are on their way. Because I just the headset, the boom, it's the boom for me that really closes the deal. I can be, outside taking a walk, doing stuff, and just no one notices anything. And I have routinely gotten feedback that it's so, as far as like cost effective. I mean, it's $150. It's not like nothing, but it's very small. And so it's good. Also in that same price point, the MV6 is just USB only, and that's what we're going to standardize on for Michael Krasny's show for the kits that we send out. For the ones where we don't use a laptop, which is we're waiting to see this week whether Apple's going to release a new Air before we buy. But I think we're going to end up buying 1 or 2 for the show, 1 or 2 Airs, because the mic, I've not seen any other than Apple be worth it, but the mics on the Airs and the Mac Pros made in the last 2 generations are good enough that they're better than sometimes sending somebody a mic and having them try to figure out how to plug it into their computer. Like, and by the end of it, we had someone who we sent them a mic and I thought that they were plugged in, and then they're like, "Oh, should I plug the mic in?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, plug it in." Didn't sound as good. The MV7 didn't sound as good as the M3 MacBook Pro or whatever in a certain environment, and so I think that it's come a long way, and most people would know I wouldn't have said that a year ago, 2 years ago.
5, yeah.
But Apple's obviously spending some buku bucks on R&D to make that work. But we haven't seen that with other laptops, they may, but we haven't seen it with PC laptops. And I just don't know whether, the people that we've had just haven't spent as much on the laptop as the folks that spend on the Mac. I think that might be it. And it's not that the PC laptops can't do it. I just haven't seen it.
I like what Craig Kadoki said. He said, I bought a new $4,000 microphone for Zoom meetings and got a free computer.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that
the way.
We're going to test it, but I don't think that the Air will be any different. So I think I can spend $1,000 or $1,200 on an Air. The big advantage is I don't have to try to tell people how to use the mics. We're going to put AnyDesk on it and just send it to them and have them just hit OK, and then we have control of their computer and we can record locally. We can do, that way we can go back to using Zoom, which would be great. Riverside is anyway. It records locally.
Anyway,
there you go.
That's its advantage.
This is big advantage. Yeah.
Very good. Well, we've been shooting for an hour tonight, and I think we're going to be able to do it. We've got a couple of minutes each to do our content recommendations. Carl, what have you got?
So I've got a bit of a standard. So what I'm going to put forward is Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Oh, yeah. So if you haven't watched these yet, well, you're missing out. So I would probably put this up in the top 3 television shows ever made, full stop. So essentially Better Call Saul is a sequel to Breaking Bad, but the timeline is a prequel, but you do want to watch Better Call Saul afterwards. It's a lot more rewarding. And it won't make too much sense if you watch Better Call Saul first as far as what's going on. There is a movie as well called El Camino, which sits in the timeline, I believe, between the 5th and 6th season of Better Call Saul, but you can kind of watch that whenever. Watching it last is probably good, but anyway. But yeah, so these 2 series, if you're looking for something that's dramatic, and you're interested in true crime, but you've done all the true crime and you want to watch some fictitious crime, which is presented extremely well, this is a series. Now, the people who make this are the people who made the X-Files. So when the X-Files finished up, I guess in the early 2000s, they moved on to other projects, and then one of the executive producers from the X-Files kind of came up with this idea for Breaking Bad. He brought the team back together, too expensive to make in California, so they moved out to Albuquerque in New Mexico, and they worked out there for how many years? I think, 6 years or 7 years for Breaking Bad, another 6 years for Better Call Saul. And then, of course, that team is still put together, and Chris Carter came back, and while that team was on hiatus, he made X-Files seasons again. So they're currently making another X-Files season right now, or I think they finished it, I think they're in post-production now. So there's been 3 additional X-Files seasons made since the start of Breaking Bad. So that whole team that has made X-Files and Breaking Bad, X-Files again, and then Better Call Saul, then X-Files again, have been working pretty much non-stop, which is good. They've been kept in work. And a lot of people have come through that system, coming in at entry-level jobs and have popped out the other end as directors, cinematographers. So that's a really cool part of that system too. But it's a really cool story. It's a really cool show. Really interesting characters, and the actors, the acting in this is pretty much top-notch as far as television is concerned as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard someone say recently, the thing with Breaking Bad is if you watch it in reverse, it's about this terrible drug dealer who becomes a really good high school teacher.
Story of redemption.
Yeah, very slow redemption. Yeah, exactly. Alex, what have you got?
And by the way, this is not my recommendation.
All right, this is sneaking another one in.
I'm just letting people know that X-Files is available in HD now, and it's pretty awesome. No, my recommendation this week is The Pit. So The Pit is I think it's Max. I think it's on Max. And it is. I will admit that I started watching it because it's based in Pittsburgh. Although you would not really know. I mean, there's a couple Pittsburgh references, but no one has a Pittsburgh accent, and nobody. There's not a lot of outdoor shots in Pittsburgh or anything else. So it's not really, I mean, they call it The Pit, but it's not that much Pittsburgh. But I started watching because of that. And it's pretty gripping, and it has the reputation right now. Most of the folks talking about it say most doctors that work in ERs have said this is the most accurate. They're not saying it's always accurate, but they said it's the most accurate depiction of their experience of the ER that they've ever seen, so on TV. And so it's very gritty. It's, you don't know what's going to happen. There's no happy endings. Not very many. There are the endings that occur when random people are coming in with trauma, but it's pretty, it has a certain realistic realism to it. One thing that's really interesting from a sound design perspective, there's no music. So that every once in a while you get a hum every once in a while, but outside of a low every once in a while, there's zero music. And my wife couldn't take it for the first couple episodes because she was just like, I don't understand. There's no music. It's no, it's basically like ER without the music. So Noah Wiley, who was an ER, is now the older doctor here. And so anyway, I think it's really good. It's really good. It's low on the drama content. There's not a lot of interpersonal. I mean, there's interpersonal relationships, but not. You always know that when things get soapy is usually when I stop watching. It's like kind of like, you didn't need to do that. And so there's some subtones, but not a lot. And there's still too much, more than I would put in. But overall it's better, at least. And it's all happening over one day. So every hour, it's like kind of like 24 every hour is the next hour in the day that you get to see as they go through it. So it's cool.
Okay. David, what have you got?
Well, I was scrambling for something, but I don't know what rock I've been laying under, but I missed this when it came out. There's a guy his name is Jerobeam Fenderson, and he has his project of oscilloscope music. And back in November of last year, he released a new album, or not an album, it's a floppy disk of oscilloscope music. And the description says, since it's almost entirely created with parametric functions, it's possible to store only these functions in an executable program and let the program create the music and visuals on the fly. It's really nuts. The music itself is not really musical, but it does. It's kind of cool to experience, and I'll put links to it. You can either download the files themselves, watch it on YouTube, or you can pay 40 euros for the floppy disk, and it's kind of good stuff.
That's great.
My kind of stuff.
Actually play it on the oscilloscope.
It uses like a emulator. Sorry, it's an emulated oscilloscope, but it generates the music and visuals that it generates are mind-blowing kind of stuff. And if you hear the music that's going on behind this, it's all just like all sorts of noises, etc. But it's fun. I'll put a link in the chats.
Looks a bit like Winamp visualizations, which I enjoyed years ago.
Yeah. I did too. Then the fact that he squeezed it all on a floppy disk, and the floppy disk comes with a 24-page booklet, so
All right. Well, this is not my recommendation. This is a recommendation I made when Alex wasn't here, and that's September 5. Have you seen that movie yet, Alex? September 5. It's about the first ABC broadcast of the Olympics. The first
I haven't
live.
seen it yet. No, I haven't seen it yet.
It's so good.
It's good.
It's
Mm.
very, very good. Yeah. If I lived in the same
I've
country,
seen it go by, and I've
as you-
gone, oh, I should check that out, but I haven't.
Oh,
haven't
we
seen
should
it yet.
watch it.
Okay.
Yeah, we should watch it. Anyway, my recommendation this time is Wicked. People have probably seen, I mean, it's been all over the internet, but Wicked, I've been watching it now with commentary, and it's really, really good. And director's commentary, I'm really enjoying. So they did lots of physical sets, and yeah, so it's worth checking out if you haven't seen it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Laura for looking after the questions, and Peter and Taylor that were working in the background there, the 4 panelists, all of us here, and for your questions. Thanks for doing that. Catch us tomorrow at 7 a.m. Pacific. See ya.